Have you heard any ghost stories from your travels or where you've been or anything? Or?
Yeah, well, most of the ghost stories that I have heard. I mean, I always grew up in California, hearing a little bit about La Llorona.
Yeah.
And do you know about La Llorona?
Yeah,
So
she's my major one I'm talking
okay,
about.
yeah.
I was going to ask you about her.
I did hear about La Llorona, and I always associated La Llorona with kind of the boogeyman, like a figure that helps keep kids in line.
In bed, yeah. Don't go out after dark.
And but then I came to understand it a little bit more in terms of the history of,
right.
you know, of Mexico and especially the U.S.-Mexico border. And in Mexico City, all of my family members, my mother-in-law, my husband's Mexican, my mother-in-law, all my sisters, they love to sit around and tell ghost stories. And,
really?
you know, for them, they're very real.
Yeah.
Of apparitions. And there are so many people in the family who have experienced, you know, who've seen La Llorona, or she's called like La Huesuda, or La Catrina, like death.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
cool.
It's mildly embarrassing to admit that you've seen La Llorona, because it's a sign that you've done something bad. You know, like men who are womanizers or who are out too late and getting drunk and just misbehaving see La Llorona. So if you've seen La Llorona, it's should be a sign that you better shape
kind
up.
of an omen, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you know, like my husband has lots of friends who are sure they saw La Llorona, like on the metro or whatever.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right, awesome. Have you heard anything about the history of these stories or how they came about, kind of, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think La Llorona is a historical figure, and it just tells something about the brutal, difficult conditions that women have experienced in, like, sort of frontier Mexico, which is the northern Mexico. And she was a woman who, as I understand it from a book I have that tells the stories from Cinco Puntos Press, and I also have a video. It's just called La Llorona.
Right.
She was a woman with 2 children with a man, and they were very happy, and she was very happy, and she was very beautiful, and he was very dashing and handsome, and he went off and left her for another woman, and she was so exasperated that she drowned her children. And this is just an archetype. It's universal. I mean, it's kind of, if you've ever seen the Joy Luck Club, there's an incredible scene in that book and the film too, of a Chinese mother who is drowning her son because she's so exasperated with her husband's adultery.
Right.
And so, you know, there's a Mexican element to it, but there's also just a human,
kind of worldwide.
The myth of, you know, the archetype or the myth of infanticide. And our whole culture is still wrapped up in it, in terms of, in the U.S., there are, you know, cases of women who kill their children.
Yeah.
And they really capture the American imagination.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of looking at, you know, what is it about that woman's life and the way that motherhood is constructed as such a burden, you know, for some women who have difficulties. It's always that she's a witch and she's terrible, and we never look at what could we change in our society that would make this a more welcoming place for babies. Instead, we just blame women.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. That pretty much, I was going to ask, do you notice any similarities and differences between Mexican and American stories? But kind of covered that pretty much. Yeah. Let me see. Do you personally tell any of these stories to children?
I would never. No,
yeah, I wouldn't.
No.
It would scare them. I think that's